Welcome to Welcome to Dead Headspace, part of Silver Shamrock's Horrorcast, a podcast network that includes Killing Time with Silver Shamrock and Unburying the Dead, where we exhume classic horror paperbacks for the new generation. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined not today by Brennan. Why is that? Because he is in the guest chair today. Say hello, Brennan.
Hello.
And I'm joined by my three guest hosts. Ken McKinley, say hi, Ken.
Hi there.
Ronald Kelly, say hi, Ron.
Howdy.
And Gabino Iglesias, say hi, Gabino.
Hello.
And we're gonna just basically interrogate Brennan for a little bit about Slattery Falls, and let's just jump into it, man. What got you into horror?
Well, first of all, as far as the interrogation thing goes, this does kind of feel like a tribunal there. I'm a little afraid to misspeak, but I'll go for it. We hear so many answers when we because we've had well over 100 episodes of this show, and we've asked so many people that question, gotten a lot of great answers, and so many of them, go back to I was exposed to something inappropriate at an early age. And, I wish I had that story, even though it's cliche. But no, I actually was not super into horror growing up. I remember watching Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare on my little black and white TV in my room that had the little clicky dial on it, and you move the rabbit ears if you wanted Freddy to be a little less fuzzy. And, even though that's not one of the better entries in the series, to put it lightly, it was still a lot of fun, and it kind of blended that horror and humor that, I've always kind of loved. From there, horror has always scared the shit out of me. I remember, I think Blair Witch came out, I want to say 99, right around there. So I'd have been around 14 years old, and I don't think I even saw the movie. I just had somebody describe it to me, and, it lived in my head. And, when I finally did see it a few years later, that scene of the kid turned around in the basement at the end, like, that's always going to stick with me. And then when I got out of college, I started to pick up reading a little bit more. I kind of got out of that for a while. And like so many other people, that gateway drug was Stephen King. I picked up The Gunslinger. I think that they were in attempt number 53 of however many it took to try and make a Dark Tower movie. And I it caught my interest, so I picked up the first one, and I slammed through that entire series in, maybe a month. Went to The Stand after that, and then devoured the rest of his catalog over probably another 2 years. Then I hit this nice little funk where I kind of thought that was it. I couldn't really get into Anne Rice, and I couldn't really get into Dean Koontz, and I kind of thought that was it for a while. And what a weird point of view to think that there's an entire literature genre with only 3 people writing in it. So, when that world blew up, and I figured out that there are so many more people doing these things, I could have been reading Ronald Kelly this whole time, and it was under my radar. For all I know, it was on a spinning rack in the drugstore right down the street. I could have had those. I could have had those paperbacks anytime. But you know what? I'm absolutely loving the amount of stuff that's out there, how different it is, and all that jazz.
So what was one of the first ones that you picked up outside of King that really shook you?
McCammon. And it was a while after King. I kind of got to the end of King and went back to the beginning and did it again. But eventually I kind of hit the point in the road where I was like, okay, this whole idiotic idea of there only being a limited amount of authors, it can't possibly be right. And, I didn't get too far outside the old white guy wheelhouse. But I, picked up some McCammon. I picked up some Dan Simmons. And I can't remember what else off the top of my head. And, ethical issues aside, I couldn't really get into Simmons. Carry On Comfort didn't really do it for me. His short story collection, I think Prayers Like a Stone, it wasn't for me. But the first McCammon I picked up, I don't think it was Swan. I actually don't remember which one it was. I know I got to Swan Song before Boy's Life. Wolf's Hour was pretty early on for me, and that was, anybody who hasn't read Wolf's Hour absolutely needs to get on that one. It's like, what if James Bond was a werewolf? And I mean, could you get a cooler what if than that?
It looked like you had more to say, Brennan. I didn't want to cut you off.
I didn't.
All right, so I want to go back to when you said the thing about how you could have been reading Ronald Kelly, and he could have been on a spin rack. Right? Like, yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Like, just throwing out John Skip too. Could have walked past his books a million times and never even connected it because you were a kid and you weren't in that mindset. So that's fascinating because we talk to we all intersect with each other from time to time. And it's pretty neat. If you don't know a person, they know someone. Like, we don't know Stephen King, but we know like 5 guys that do, or whatever. It's a strange world. Gabino, do you have anything, man?
Oh, I have a whole bunch of questions. Patrick texted me and he said he was thinking about doing a roast, and I thought maybe we could turn it into an interview. But I saved some of those questions. And my first one is you told some bullshit story about how you wrote this before you met him. That's a lie, because this is to both of you are those characters going back and forth. So percentage wise, how much of it is fiction and how much of it is non?
You know what? I'm gonna be fuzzy on the timeline because I knew Patrick for a little while before I started writing that, but it was just from limited interactions on Twitter, and then we worked on a review platform for a little while, and we I remember we started getting we became good friends around the time that the Patriots got bounced in the early 2020 season, because that's what we would talk about. Tom Brady's decline and his first round exit, and then eventually his departure. So I had probably half the book done by the time we became really good friends. But to answer your question in a totally different way, there's definitely a lot of me in Travis. I know that because he's kind of a smartass, Patrick will say that's him, but it's not. Because Travis is a smartass, but if you read the book, he's insecure as hell. That's right in the first chapter. That's why he approaches Josh in the first place, because he doesn't know how to talk to anybody else. So he kind of puts on this facade, and now I'm going all psychotherapy here. He puts on this face in public, but no, he's very insecure, and I hope you get a sense of that through reading the book.
What book is this? No, but like, I'm not trying to be jokey, even though I just was for sure. But
No,
can
we
you
were
tell
just
us?
gonna let you stew in silence.
Sorry, man. Can you tell us before we go any further with this? Can you give us potential readers the synopsis, and then I'll shut the hell up.
Sure. So we've already kind of dove into the characters a little bit, but the book is Slattery Falls. It comes out. It will be out by the time this airs, but it's out on Tuesday, July 20th. And the basic synopsis is it starts with these two friends. They're just kind of starting out college, and they meet, and one of them kind of has this obsession with in investigating paranormal places. Ghost hunting is going to get put on it, and it even says it on the back cover. But it's a little different than your Sci-Fi Channel ghost hunting show. At least I hope it is, because that's what I was going for. So these two friends investigate a house in Connecticut, and they run into a little something. Then they add the cousin of one of the characters, Elsie, to the group through fortuitous circumstances, and the three of them kind of bond over investigating this. It's kind of like, their life, their lives for different reasons have all kind of ended up at this point, and it's really something to focus on, something to elevate them above, the mediocrity of day-to-day life, if you will. And it kind of starts in the first house, but by the time they're done with the second house, it's very clear that there are some elements that tie them together, and there's something following them, if you will. And about halfway through the book, we jump forward 10 years, and we spend the rest of the time dealing with that.
Gabino, is there any follow-up? I don't want any of us to kind of take away from your question.
Do more, but I think we should do go around, because otherwise I'll take over and keep asking Doug.
Ron, why don't you take over, sir?
I read the book in April. Brennan sent me a PDF of it, and I read it, and it's actually of all the books I've read, it's one of the three favorite books I've read this year. So one was Laurel's Crossroads. I'm kind of behind on my reading, so these are books that's probably been out for a year or so. Laurel's Crossroads and Sam's True Crime and Slattery Falls. I love this book. It was most of all I liked it because it was written first person. I love that kind of narrative. A lot of there's some readers that don't like first person, but I do, and I don't think I've ever written it. I've written some short stories first person, but not an entire novel. So, but it just I love this book. It drew me in. I could relate to the characters really well, especially Josh, because after I started reading it, I got in touch with Brennan, and I said, I'm seeing some autistic tendencies in this character. And it was something that he didn't elaborate on in the book, but I told him this is my son 10 years from now. So, I could really relate to all three of the main characters, and it was just, I just love ghost books and ghost hunting books and stuff like that. So I'm really pleased that the reading public's gonna be able to read this.
Yeah, and Ron, I gotta say, I reached out to several people to read it a little bit early and throw out some thoughts on it, and I think I sent those out, like you said, in April, and said, if you can, if I'm not too much of a thorn in your side, could you please try and read it for the beginning of July. And I think you had it back to me the next week. And you're not sitting around doing nothing, man. You are a busy man. So for you to make the time for that, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And then let's not brush aside the fact that you just put me in a collection with Samantha Koyasnik's True Crime and Laurel Hightower's Crossroads. Like, good gravy. That's some company.
Yeah, those are great books. Ken, when you first read this, quick story, Brennan told me about it. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Brennan or Ken. But Brennan said that I gave it to Ken to read. We talked for half an hour. He gave it to you just for feedback to help for him to publish, try to sell it with I forget who, but it took 30 minutes for you to finally say that you wanted to buy it, and Brennan laughs at that every damn time, and so do I. So why don't you tell us from your point of view, the first person point of view.
First person point of view. So I knew when I was talking to him that I wanted this story. So, but I like to make him sweat it a little bit. So no, when I read the story, one of the things that struck me was just how good the characters were. Josh, Elsie, Travis, they felt like people I knew. It also felt like something that I would have done in college if I would have pulled my head out of my ass at an early enough age and went for stuff like that. And it really drew me in. And then his settings and stuff on there, it really, again, you felt it down to your bones with this. And, when he first pitched the idea to me, for lack of a better term, I mean, that was what I expected, was the whole ghost hunter type of thing. And again, it's been done so poorly over the years that I really wasn't expecting a lot. And he kicked the door open and shoved this thing in my face and made me read it, type of thing. That's what it was to me. So when I read this manuscript and I got a taste of the story line as well as the character development stuff that he had there, I really thought he had something special. And he has a voice for a debut author that a lot of them don't. And that's hard to find. Usually it's, there's so much you have to clean up with debuts. His wasn't that way. He had a few of the first time issues, but nothing that was a deal breaker. So it excited me because, I kind of root for the guy a little bit. I mean, we've got kind of a relationship and stuff with him being a reviewer, and he's reviewed a ton of our work. So, you do root for the ones that are the good ones. And, when I got a taste of that, I didn't feel like I had to worry about my friendship, making a mess of, my judgment. Like I said, his story kicked the door in. It made you want to read it. I couldn't help myself. It was that good.
Now, I'm really curious, man. With debut authors, I think this would be a good learning moment for newer writers too. What do you think is something that you would advise to kind of hit the brakes on? And what I mean is, I'm kind of leaning towards our debut authors. Do they tend to rush the process? Do they seem like they're kind of putting out the first novel that they wrote, and maybe they're kind of getting a little bit too big for their britches? Along those lines, what's your advice? What separated Brennan from other debut authors? That's a weird way to phrase it, how I just did, but that's how I did it.
Again, the character development, he had a little bit of a passive voice that a lot of debut authors do, and even ones that have a handful of them under their belt, they'll have a passive voice. He had some of that, but nothing, again, that was a deal breaker on it. It was very easily correctable. But again, the character development, that was, I can't stress how important that was for the story. It's not a very long story, so you don't have a lot of time to create that in-depth characters like you would in, say, a 300-400 page novel. But literally after 20 pages or 10,000 words, I was totally invested in these characters. I wanted to see where they were going, what was this going to happen to them, what was around the corner for them. It drew me in, and it's harder to describe outside of that. It's just a feeling. It pulls you in, like someone's got a line on you and it's tugging you through the water. You can't wait to see what's on the other side.
Agreed. Gabino, I'm dying to hear what your thoughts are, man.
So I have a half-cooked email because I wrote my blurb, and it was, "This sucks." And then I realized
We're not doing the roast, man. No, change the plans.
I needed to make it a little longer. No, but actually, I'll do a funny one and a serious one. And I'm glad Ken is here to talk a little bit about this. The first thing that I enjoyed from the book was, I don't think you get 15 pages in before he literally says, "Listen, I don't want to waste your time." So for me, it was like, you start reading and the pacing is just like, yes, there's a little bit of story about each one of the houses. Yes, there's obviously character development. There's a lot of humor in there, short dialogue back and forth. But it's go, 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 go. Like, it never fucking stops. And it was that line, and also when he decided to do away, because I've read novels about ghost hunting before, and you could literally count paragraphs of equipment. Like, this is what we're gonna set up, and this is how we do the camera thing, and this is how we capture the EVPs. And that moment when he's like, "We're gonna fucking do away with the doohickeys," I was like, "Yes, he's aware of pacing." And that we don't have a lot of time, especially when we're craving that, fun, creepy, fast-paced. What are you gonna find in the next room type of horror? And I know we're dealing with a debut author, so that there's a mix of that comes naturally to some people, but also there's a lot of cutting and learning how to not do the passive voice, and how not to talk about the color of the walls if you're actually paying attention to the ghost. So I guess the question is for both Brennan and Ken, about how that process went, because this thing goes by fast. There is no extra fat. There is no gristle. There is no filler. There's no dumb, well, we're driving, let's talk about your mom and the weather and sports. There's none of that. It's just like, hey, we're going to go to this house. Let's hit it up. We're going to do a little bit of lock picking, and in we go. So yeah, this is one of those serious questions. How was the process of trying to nail that pacing? Like, that this is a horror novel, almost a horror novella. It's like you start it and it almost demands to be read in one or two sittings.
So when I started writing this, not really knowing what I was doing, I figured it was going to be a longer novel. I mean, if you made me guess on day one, how long's this thing going to end up being, I'd have probably put it, over 200 pages, maybe south of 300. And I found myself just skipping the boring parts. It's simple as that, really. If I found it boring, I, crossed it out and moved on. Back to something Ron said earlier, he said he enjoyed, the fact that it was in first person, and I started writing it because that's just what I thought it wanted, and I would come across, these opinions every so often that, a novel should be in third person. That's just kind of, a lot of people accept that that's just the way it is. And if I had listened to that and said, I need to rewrite this in third person, I don't believe it would have worked. And, as far as the point you brought up, Gabino, with, where he says, I don't want to waste your time. Absolutely. That chapter you're referring to, we could have gone, through every room in the house, but even, in detail. But even if something, spooky occurs in every single house, it's going to lose its punch by the third room. And, then when something of consequence happens, the reader's half asleep. Or I'm half asleep, so I'm assuming the reader's bored too. There's, another thing that I felt like kind of, and that whole I don't want to bore you, that's something you can't do in third person. You can, if you're doing a first person narration, you could say, let me just skip over the crap. You can skip over the crap in third person, but you can't call the reader's attention to it.
Unless you're Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, exactly. And there's another moment, if it's not in that chapter, it's pretty soon after, where they go through, they talk about all the things that the hauntings other people have experienced in this house, and then when they get in, he's like, I think I remember something about a Navy ship, but I don't know, it's flown the coop at this point. And I did some research into, because the Nathan Hale Museum, the Hale House in Coventry, Connecticut, it's a real place. It has, real reports of everything you read in that chapter where they're talking about it. That's, essentially factual until they actually get into the house and I just start making shit up. But in that moment, you're, especially the way that we've set up this narrator, he's not going to be like, yes, of course, his brother, Thaddeus. No, he's not. That's not his type. He's not going to remember all the details. So for him to say, I think there was something like this, that just felt authentic to me. But back to your original question, how do we set up the pacing? I would, at the risk of sounding, borderline arrogant, I would say the pacing was always there because I didn't want it to be boring. I wouldn't get through a page and say, I'm going to leave all this detail. I'd take it out immediately when I was writing the thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and when I was doing the editing and stuff on it, there wasn't anything in there that we took out to tighten up the pacing. The pacing, like you said, was already there. One of the best things about this story is how authentic it is. And it's those little details that he just talked about, how the character's like, yeah, how can I remember this, blah, blah, blah. That's exactly what would happen to me. And just like he said, that's what would happen to him. That's one of the things I really do love about this story is how authentic these characters are. They're not perfectly remembering stuff. They're aware. The awareness is there. And the banter back and forth. I just, when I was reading this, I just kept thinking, yeah, this is how me and my college friends would have been. We'd have been busting each other's chops, but yet we would have been there for each other. It's just a relationship. So I like that a lot.
Ken, curious, why did you edit this as opposed to Kenneth Kane?
I don't know. There was something about the story. So I do this from time to time where I'll choose a story that it'll speak to me in a certain way where I think I have a pretty good idea of what I'd like to see tighten up on it. And I will jump in there and I'll do that. And, again, to tell you specifically what about this story it is, I don't know. It's just a feeling. And I've done that for a handful of them that we've released. And then, the majority of them, Ken Kane does, and he does an absolute amazing job, but he does a different kind of editing than I do. He's got awareness that I can't even begin to start. But this one was clean. I didn't feel like it needed any of the stuff that I couldn't bring to the table. And it spoke to me. So, yeah, I wanted to throw my hat in the ring on this one. So for some reason, so hopefully for better or for worse, if it bombs, then I'll blame it on Kane. So,
you know what, man? My opinion on the book was that I echo what what Ron and Ken and Gabino said, but also when I read Weeks, I mean, like, that guy legit creeped me out. He doesn't care about anything, and that's scary. A person that doesn't care about crossing any border or ethical line or whatever you want to put in there, whatever variable would frighten you. That's him. That's Weeks. And I felt like Gabino mentioned 15 pages in or whatever. Just there was something. It felt real. I mean, Josh is an outcast, if you will, for lack of a better word, but he's someone that you care about. And you were very, whether it's conscious decision or not, you were very focused on character development, and that's the biggest thing, man. Someone talked to Tom Hanks before and said, "How do you know what movies to pick?" And he, how do they get all successful and how do they blow up like they do? And basically said that, I'm paraphrasing, he said that it's about people. We focus on the people first. That's the anchoring reference point. That's how you or me or whoever can relate to that person. And you put them in a situation and you're going to want to see them get out of it safely. And when they don't, it rips your heart out. So I'll leave it at that because I feel like I'm about to breach some spoiler territory. So I just want to say that cover. I want to hear from you, Brennan, what your thoughts are when you first saw Keelan Patrick Burke's cover for this.
I mean, there's nobody who's doing work quite like him in the horror genre. So then, as over the moon as excited as I was, when Silver Shamrock picked up the book, one of the initial thoughts wasn't even my book's going to be in readers' hands. It was Keelan's going to do a cover for it. And I worked with him, through Ken. So I pass the ideas to Ken. Ken passes them to Keelan. So I don't know. For all I know, he just listened to my ideas and then said, "Okay, here's what I actually want you to do." But no, it was my original vision, and I had to weigh it out in my head for like 6 months because I just couldn't figure out the visual. Was I want silhouettes. I want the 3 characters, and I want them in silhouettes. They're nothing against people who put a more almost photographic image of a character on the cover, but then you're already telling the reader exactly what to do. And Patrick, you've read enough stuff that I've written to know that I don't give everything. I don't like giving everything to the reader. When I write a story, I like to think of it as an interactive experience. I'm doing the work, but you got to meet me halfway, and you got to think about, you got to fill in some blanks here. So the character description in the book is relatively bare bones. If you really think about what does Travis look like, you don't know, because I never tell you. It'd almost get weird if he was just talking about what he looks like all the time. But
he's not the type. He's not the character. Tell it.
So long-winded way of saying, I always wanted the 3 characters, but I wanted them in silhouette to leave a little to the imagination and let people fill in the blanks themselves. And I liked the idea of having them looking down, the staircase once they get to the Weeks house in the 3rd act. I wanted them looking down, and then I thought, you know what? It'd be even cooler if they were if our viewpoint wasn't from the character's point of view, but if it was from the house's point of view, from the basement's point of view, or whatever is in the basement's point of view. And then Keelan added all the smoke. And I'm so glad he did, because we could have ended up, just with what I provided him, we could have ended up with a very black and white, cover. And instead we've got some color, and we've got a lot to draw the eye on there. And I love the cover, but it was, once I saw the full spread with the back cover, which for video listeners, we've got kind of that dark smoke, but then when you turn it over, it kind of lightens up, but that pattern
that's
continues.
so fucking cool. I've never seen that back cover before.
Oh, well, I sent it to you. You probably just didn't look at it. That's embarrassing.
I didn't look at it. I don't read shit you sent me. That's why I didn't see it. Did you really send me that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a terrible friend.
Yep.
I think it's very important for a writer to be able to work with the cover artist or the cover designer, because most writers do have vision for their cover, and I certainly do. I want all fangs and claws and stuff usually, but back when I wrote for Zebra, I didn't have that. The only time I saw what the cover was going to be like is when they sent me the cover flat, and it was too late. You couldn't protest or anything like that. But with the indie press, you can work closely with the artists and designers, and I know Ken's very well. He's very receptive about what the author likes on the cover, or the 2 artists I work with, Alex McVeigh and Zach McCain, they're always on board with my ideas, and so that's a big benefit of working with the indie press, because you almost get to set your own show, as far as writing the book and how you want to present it and stuff like that. So I think that's a very important benefit we have with this industry. It's something I didn't have with the mass market at all. So that's what I have to say about it.
And I think the bigger you go, it's certainly seems like the less say you have. I wouldn't say no to having my book in Barnes and Noble, but some of the horror covers there, they're not the best. and you have to imagine that when the publisher is investing that much in the marketing campaign for the book, then they're not going to, you as the author are not going to have quite as much say in what goes on that front cover.
Right.
It's not just books too, man. It's everything. Like one of my childhood best friends, he was a very good figure skater and skated for Disney on Ice and he's an actor too, and he did some bigger stuff. And he told me, same thing that you just said, Brennan. The bigger it is, he goes, it seems like everything kind of just is hitting a slow stop, and you kind of out of the loop. And that I think we can all agree that that's kind of what makes independent publishing special.
Well, with like mass market or the big publishers, I mean, you have too many people involved. You've got like committees, and you've got groups to do studies and stuff on what needs to be done. Well, that sometimes that gets in the way. Well, a lot of times it gets in the way, but with a indie press, I mean, you have the publisher. You usually have one or two people involved, and like it's him and well, actually it's him and
Kenneth Kane
and the artist, So and that's usually a good team up. It's as little people involved as possible is better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think a lot with the mass market, like you said, the higher you go, not only is it there's more cooks in the kitchen, but a lot of times the cooks aren't a fan of the food you're making.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not a horror fan, but yet you're in charge of horror production, to me that's a bad recipe. I think that's why I love the indie horror industry as it is now, because the ones that are doing it right, you can tell they are huge fans of the industry. They eat and breathe this stuff, and you can see it coming out in the product. And to me, there's never been a better time to be a horror author than right now.
I agree.
So I got a question for you.
Okay.
Can you give us a little bit of a genesis of this story came about?
The genesis of how the story came about?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, you cut out a little bit there.
If I remember right, you said this was your first story you ever wrote. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, the short lead up to that is when I kind of hit that king phase, around 2021. I've always kind of been I'm never happy just looking at art and listening to art. I want to make it. I'm not just going to listen to music. I got to learn to play the instrument. And then I got to go off on my own and do something like that. And I wanted to try that with writing, and I had no idea how to start. So I didn't. It really seemed like the people who did it had a natural inclination, had a degree, had some sort of training that I didn't have. And I had no idea where to begin. And it was really once I discovered the quality of, the quantity and the quality of horror out there, I said, I wanted to give it a try. And I sat up, a lot of nights trying to write in my head, trying to figure out plot and premise and characters. And it just, I couldn't do it. I had always heard that writers are writing even when they're not, that they're always telling a story in their head. And I don't have that setting. I've got to be in front of a piece of paper, or I've got to be in front of a computer. And once I figured that out, all systems were go. But I started carrying a notebook around with me and writing writing on my lunch break. And, I filled up, I actually have it right here. This is the first 30 pages or so of that book. And I would write for a couple weeks, kind of have this crippling self-doubt that said, you don't know what you're doing, put that away and eat your damn lunch. and then I'd get back to it, and back and forth, and the between trying to work forward in that, I penned out a couple short stories, ended up typing those up, submitting one, didn't get picked, but I got a really nice encouraging rejection letter. And it's, I almost sometimes I'll wonder, Cabino, even going back to our the episode you were part of about rejections, I'll wonder if maybe this novel doesn't come about if I get a shitty rejection letter. But as it stands, I didn't. I got something that said, this isn't right for us, but it really shows a lot of promise. We'd love to look at more in the future. So then I started typing this up, and I would put in, about 1,000 words a day. It certainly helped that when I really got down to it, I was working from home, as most of us were at the beginning of 2020. And, that was it. The first page of the first handwritten page of this was the first thing I ever tried to write, essentially.
I can't get over that. Dude, I wrote at least 6 novels, 3 novellas, over 20 short stories, and they didn't touch Slattery Falls.
Well, go back to the first one. Who knows? Also, then you have my biggest fear. What if I just blew my load?
That's what she said. Hey, so the first short story, Tara was my wife was my first beta reader for the first story, and she couldn't get past the first 2 pages because my tenses were mixed up, because I haven't read a whole lot before that time back in 2013, and it's gonna take years to learn how to write the right. It's gonna take years how to learn how to write the right way. So what I'm getting at is, man, you came along very quick, very, very well, and I don't really know how to end this part of the conversation besides good job.
The question I'll answer that wasn't there is, I just don't think you can. I don't think you can undersell how important reading is. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't pick up a pen and try to write until I was 33 years old. But God damn it, I spent the 13 years before that reading well over 100 books a year. So even though I wasn't writing, I was getting ready to do it. You can't. I can't overstress just how important it is if you want to write to read, and to read a lot of stuff, because I love horror. I believe in reading widely, although I am definitely a lot more horror focused than I used to be. But I'll read. There was a long time when I ran out of King books to read, when I would grab science fiction, when I would grab fantasy, when I would grab whatever the hell Vonnegut and Polnick get lumped into.
Transgressive, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Or just Vonnegut and Polnick. But
Yeah.
if you when you're reading that, like, you're teaching yourself to write. You really are. It's when you read a great book, it's a 200-page free lesson.
Yeah. Gentlemen, jump in.
I don't know if they've told you yet, Brennan, but when your 7th, 6th novel, whatever, it comes out, and then you'll be doing a signing, and somebody will come up to you with Slattery Falls and give it to you to sign, you're probably going to hate it. So use this time to listen to what people have to say about it, because when the dark days come, you're going to have a little chunk of something to, like, hey, I did it already. I wrote it. I got it. Somebody liked it. They put it out. I got a great cover, and the reception was awesome. And that's the one thing with like debut authors, is like, try to enjoy the process as much as you can. Learn everything that you can, because then you're gonna write the second one, and you're gonna, if all goes well, it'll be a little better. Because remember, it's not about being great. It's about getting better with each new book. So 7 books down the line, somebody's gonna hand you this one, like, oh man, I discovered this one on Amazon, and you killed it, and you're gonna be like, oh fuck, that one sucks.
Yeah, King. I heard King say on an interview that he hates. I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to say he hates it, but he's not a fan of Carrie.
Yeah,
Well-
I get that, and the longer you do it, I see Ron, I see Brian Keene, I see folks that have been at it for a while, and you talk to them about the early days, and they're like, I don't know, I had no idea what I was doing.
Oh, okay, that'd be great to ask Ron. What about you? Sorry to cut you off, Gavino.
Yeah.
Ron, what do you like? Do you see hindsight? Do you see fear? Do you see any of your early books come out that you're like, what the hell was I doing?
Well, actually, I think I did a pretty good job, because, Zebra was like a stable of non-professional writers who were learning their craft as they went. I mean, that's why a lot of people were totally down on some Zebra books because, they're a piece of crap, but I went in, I'd been writing short stories for the small press for a while, and that's where I cut my teeth on short fiction. And then when I started writing novels, for the mass market, I tried to do the best I could. I mean, I learned as I went, and by the time I reached Fear, I think I was pretty well tuned and had found my voice. It was very solid and concrete, but the first book, Hindsight, I have great, I have a great love for that because it has a lot of personal history and everything in it, a family history. Now I did reread Undertaker's Moon, and there was a lot of things in there I just cringe at because I think I used the word bestial about 2,000 times in that book. But I mean, it is a werewolf book, so I guess that was my favorite word back then when I was writing that. But yeah, I mean, like Gabino said, down the line you're going to see where, you might think, well, that's the best I could do at the time because I was, constantly learning and honing my craft, which, I still think that way. Um, I have just now, when I came back into writing in 2006, I mostly depended on my old books to, because I had a backlist of work and everything. And so I didn't do novels for a long time. It wasn't until the Buzzard Zone that I did I did a brand new novel, which was several years after I came back because I was doing the short fiction mostly and depending on old books to kind of motivate me to get back into the business. But now I'm starting to get into longer works, and I'm working on the book one to the Deadeye series and everything, and I'm getting ready to do the sequel to Fear, and that's going to be a pretty long book. It probably be around the same length as Fear was, So because there's a lot to explore and a lot to go back and look at and everything as far as that storyline. And I am collaborating with someone for the very first time, and I'm not going to elaborate on who that is. I know several of you know who it is, but and there's been some speculation on Facebook and Twitter. The people's already guessed who I'm writing with, but that's going along very, very well, and yeah, I mean, even this collaboration I'm doing it's a learning experience. This is the first time I've done it, and it's going very well. I mean, I'm depending on my co-writer to kind of leave me alone because he has co-written quite a bit. So yeah, but
So I've got a question for you, Ron, as well as Gabino. Do you feel that there's any truth in the saying sophomore slump when it comes to writing? And if so, what advice do you have for young Brennan to avoid that?
Please, Ron, go for it.
No, go ahead, Gabino.
Oh, I was gonna say I didn't hear about that till after my second book was out, but then so I skipped the whole process. But there's a point where, and I've seen this with a lot of musicians, friends of mine, that it's you got nothing to lose with that first one because nobody gives a shit. Nobody's paying attention. You haven't published anything. So you go all out, you do whatever you want, and then if it works, suddenly you realize, oh, there's an editor who's going to look at this, and we're going to have to fix some stuff if it's not working all right. And if I went, I don't know, super violent on the first one, am I going to create expectations on my readership, and how am I going to deliver on those? So I think the slump usually comes, if it comes, from overthinking. It's kind of like, you set yourself up for failure because you're worried, like, oh my God, am I a professional now? What am I doing? Am I going to deliver on time? Do I have a deadline? It has to be better. You know that. It has to be better than your previous one. And you can't rehash your previous book, no matter how good it was and how successful it was. So don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. You already did it once. You survived. Move on to the next one and try to get it done. It'll be a different story. It'll be a different experience. Roll with the punches and just get the thing done.
Yeah, I agree. With me, I really didn't hit a sophomore slump because I had already sold my second book right after the first book, and then I was doing multi-book deals, and I was just in that long process of let's do novel, and writing for Zebra was an isolated process. You didn't really get much feedback from fans and all that like you do now because you have social media. So I was like it in my little boxed Zebra world, and it wasn't until it was all over that's when I hit the slump. Right there is when Zebra shut their doors, and horror was kind of poison at the time. So, but I really, I did the first novel. I already had the second novel written, and they snatched that up. So it wasn't like I was actually worried about is anybody gonna like the second novel or anything, because it was such a speedy process back then. So I don't think I ever. It was only when I came back and things were harder. It was harder to get your name out there, and a lot of people have forgotten me in 10 years, and that's when I hit the slump. And I'm thankfully I'm out of the slump now.
Yeah, I mean, in response to that, as far as the slump goes, I love Gabino's answer of you just skipped it. You didn't find out about it until it was already
No
passed.
one told me.
Yep.
Wait. No, here's a better question. Would you have given shit about it?
And I think the way I dealt with any semblance of that, because I've heard plenty of people talk about the the expectations on the first novel, because it's got to be everything you have to say, all going into one book. This is the first thing people are going to read, from you. And I had an easy time not buying into that. It's a story. It does not have to represent the entirety. It does not have to be everything that I have to say. It's 130 pages. I sure as hell hope it's not everything I have to say. But the way I tried to deal with that is I finished the book, and I did what you're supposed to. I put it away for 6 weeks and I started something else. Whether it was another book or whether it was a short story, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. And then when I was ready, I went through it with a fine-tooth comb and picked it apart. sent it off to some people to read. Got some fantastic notes from Patrick. Janine Pipe was one of my early readers and had a lot of great things to say and a lot of helpful stuff. And then, spent the next however many months jumping back and forth between writing other stuff and just trying to polish this and get it ready to go somewhere. And thankfully that somewhere ended up being Silver Shamrock. Dream publisher since day one, and I couldn't be happier to have my book there.
Brennan, we already signed you. You don't have to kiss my ass.
Well, I might want to work with you again, okay?
Okay, kiss away.
That's not how friendship works, by the way, Brennan. So
Yeah, that's true.
I'll pass this on to you because I had a conversation with Josh Mallerman, and this thing stuck with me. And he said, your writing career is like creating a Frankenstein's monster. You put everything you have into each one of your works, and then you're gonna have a book. You don't know which one that's gonna be like the head, right? And another one's gonna be like the right arm, but you're gonna have a book that's gonna be like the left pinky. And that it doesn't fucking matter. It's there. You need it for it to be like a whole thing. And you don't know if the next one is going to be like the torso or your right leg. So you have to write it anyway. And that stuck with me, man. Like not all of them are going to be the exact same process. Not all of them are going to connect in the exact same way with readers. But you already started. So you have like one piece of the monster, and now you have to keep going till you die. So don't die. That's another one. To try not to die, and then you can keep doing it.
Trying real hard every day, man.
That's funny.
It's a great analogy, though. I love the Frankenstein monster thing.
Yeah.
Pat, were you saying something?
I was just turning my head because it was very loud thunder crack. I was just gonna say that Brennan just made I don't know if he did it on purpose, but he was referring to what Josh Mallerman said to us. And he was were you doing that on purpose, Brennan?
I was thinking of Josh, but I wasn't sure whether it was when he came on our show or another one of the lots of interviews I've heard with him. So
it was our show where he talked about how how do I word this? Where people authors coming out with their first book, debut authors, try putting every single thing that they want to say in that first book, and that's a very overwhelming feeling. When you first, because you said that you started writing this before basically you kind of like knew any of us and the scene. How'd you feel? How'd you feel going into it? Did you feel like I gotta do all this or it's not gonna meet my expectations, or were you just writing a story that you're like, this is what I want to say?
I was just writing. I mean, I don't have a better answer than that. I mean, so much of this story was one of my all-time favorite quotes was from Neil Gaiman, said that what makes a story great is that every time you get to the end of a paragraph, end of a page, end of a chapter, the reader should be asking themselves what happens next. And I found myself just doing that with this story. And in this, 35,000 word, 35 chapter, there's 35 chapters. They're short. I think the longest one is like 5 pages. And it's not necessarily 35 cliffhangers. That would be exhausting, but I wanted to, I would write a little bit and create like just a little scene. And then I'd say, come back to it the next day and say, what happens next? Or, when imposter syndrome showed up, come back to it in 3 weeks and say, okay, now I need to know what happens next. We took like a mid-season break. Now we got to go forward. So, I mean, no, there was, I put no pressure whatsoever on myself to put my entire life story in there. I didn't know that was something I was supposed to do. Thankfully. So I had an idea for a story, a very vague idea for a story. And I just wanted to get it down a couple pages at a time.
Now you talk about how with Josh, he's and this is kind of hinted or implied, but he's on the spectrum, and that for listeners that have heard quite a few episodes, they know that both your sons are on the spectrum. They played obviously a heavy role into this. You know what? The more we talk about this subject, the more like Friday, which was yesterday, a guy in the locker room at the end of the day was just talking about his little girl and said that she was on the spectrum. And I was like, right on. And I'm just thinking this affects more people than we probably know. So I think it's a very important subject to tackle, and you had them in your debut book. Why why'd you write it that way? I guess that's not really a great way to word it that way, but I don't
No,
know
I know
how
what you
else to
mean.
word. Yeah,
I
go
know
ahead.
what you
Too
mean.
late.
You know
You're ready.
what made.
You're
Oh,
ready.
I already said it, Gabino.
Let him answer.
Sorry, man. Sorry, this is Gabino show. My bad.
So, you know, I mentioned earlier that when I write a story, I like to kind of interact with the reader. I like to leave a little open in their imagination, and I realized pretty early on that I was writing Josh in a way where my belief is that he is autistic, and it never comes up in the story, and there are a fair few potential reasons for that. It could be there could be the fact that he just chooses never to say it. It could be the fact that you know, because of when the story takes place, and I imagine you know, the second half taking place right about now. They watch 1408 in the first half of the book, and I think that came out in like '07. So that's pretty much when I was in college. So that's pretty much where I based it. Um, and it would not be uncommon for somebody who would be labeled high functioning, which I don't love, but that's what Josh would be, high functioning, to not be diagnosed at all. I don't. I'm going to do it anyway, but I don't like necessarily saying this is my view, this is how you have to interpret it. I want everybody to kind of be able to go in and put their own spin on it. But um, I, as a teacher, I deal with a lot of kids who are autistic and are diagnosed, and for whatever reason, their parents have opt not to share that with them. And I, you know, am a big proponent of not judging, you know, another parent, but I can't get behind that decision. I think it's the way that your brain is wired. It's a very it's you're different. Your brain literally functions differently than most of the people around you. And I've seen kids that I've worked with from a young age hit this point in middle school, hit this point in high school, where they're unhappy and they are teased and they are different and they don't have an answer for why that is. And it's heartbreaking to me. So my view of the story, you know, Josh's parents don't figure super prominently into it, but there's a distance in that relationship. It's hinted at, you know, within the first 25 pages or so, and to a degree, it comes back later. My interpretation is that he was diagnosed and they never shared that with him. But as far as why I chose to put him in the story, that comes back to first person again, if I'm honest. I would not feel comfortable writing from the viewpoint of an autistic person, and I'm a believer in, you know, writing the story as necessary, writing in a way to as a way to understand. But I can only understand, you know, how the autistic brain works from a studious and observer's point of view. So that's what I did in the book. Everything that we see with every one of Josh's, um, not tics, but every behavior, whether it's avoiding eye contact, whether it's, you know, speech patterns, whether it's hyper focusing on certain things. We get it from Travis's viewpoint and his interpretation of it. And, you know, as far as the way my boys figure in, I don't want to say Josh is based off either one of them, but I'd say he's more based off my personal fears of how the world will treat them when they're older.
Ron, can you please jump in, man?
Yeah, I mean, Josh, you know, it was obvious from the beginning that I knew that Josh was on the spectrum, because my son, he has a lot of the same traits. I mean, he obsesses and focuses on one certain thing at a time. I mean, I can see him doing ghost hunting. That would be something he would focus on and do it for quite a while. I mean, Ryan, he'll focus on certain video games for a while, and then he'll get into history for a while. And I mean, he would, when he's off his medication, he hops back and forth like a ball on a pinball machine. But when he's on his medication, he's more focused, and he settles on one particular subject, and that's what he's happy with at the moment. So yeah, I really saw a lot of him and Josh, and I mean, he's not as severe as some kids are. He does make eye contact. He's a little shy around certain people because they intimidate him. If people seem interested in what he has to say to him, he will talk your ears off. But I think it was very important that this character, I mean, you didn't come out and say that he was autistic, but I think people who are familiar with this, people who are on the spectrum or have children will pick up on it.
And I also think that it's completely possible to read the entire book, not pick up on that, and still enjoy it, I suppose. It's definitely, to my mind, it's integral to the character. But it's who he is. Whether you put a label on it or not, it makes for his personality. And if I'm honest, I had fun writing these characters. I love these three characters. Maybe more than any character I've written since. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Without going into spoilers, the way you ended it, just you're not as graphic as a writer as I am, but you gutted me as a reader, man. And I'll leave it at that. Gabina, why don't you take over? It seems like you got something to say, sir.
No, I kind of enjoyed because you get the lack of eye contact almost from the get-go. Writing otherness is something that I teach, and it's one of the first things I try to tell my students. It's like, just because somebody's a person of color or a member of the LGBTQ community or on the spectrum or otherwise neurodivergent, that's part of their life. It's not the only one thing that they are. So usually you take like, oh, this person is gay, so being gay is going to be the entire character. They have no life, no interest, no love. They don't pay bills. They don't go to work. They don't think about politics or religion or philosophy because they're gay, and that's the one thing that they do. And in here, it's exactly how you should do it. These are normal people going on about their lives with this one element that makes them different. And that difference is like who they are, but also how everybody else perceives them, whether they're aware of how they're doing it or not. So it kind of felt like if I walk into a room where there's like 50 white folks and there's one other person of color, if we're looking around and then we see each other, we're going to give each other the nod. And this was kind of like that. It's like, hey, if you know, you know. And if you don't, well, enjoy the rest of it because there's this entire other universe happening. And that was a nice little touch.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was hoping for. Is and I certainly wanted to, but I didn't want to get to a point where, we get into a stressful situation and he, gets sensory overload and has a complete breakdown, because at that point, then he overcomes it and we're looking at inspiration porn here, and we lose that idea of, the fact that this is a human being. At that point, we've written a disability for 100 pages.
Right.
Ken, how about you, man? I'd love to hear what you got going on in your mind right now.
Yeah, so I'm learning more and more about these characters every time I keep revisiting them, and the word that comes to mind is three-dimensional. It's like every walk of life. You're walking down the street, you see someone, and that's how you're painting it, is what I would see if I'm walking down the street. It's not like you said, where you're bashing someone over the head. Hey, this person's autistic. You're throwing some characteristics out there, but again, you're not preaching with it. And that's not how society is. It's not how life is. You don't walk down the street and someone's jumping in your face saying, "Hey, I'm autistic." It's, you look at it, especially if if you don't have a lot of experience with autism, you're looking at it and go, something's different there, but I can't quite put my finger on it. And that's how it is. So I love the fact that, he did this in such a subtle way, because that's what life is. There's a lot of subtlety in life, and it's not until you really start peeling the layers back that you really find out what a person is. So yeah, I keep harping on character development, and he was able to do it in a very short amount of time, 35,000 words. So,
and well, I guess I'm not hosting, but in my mind, to kind of wrap up this topic, one of my favorite moments with Josh is, right after they finish up at the Hale house, and one of my biggest things I like to dispel about autistic people is, a lot of people who don't know somebody with autism think that they're challenged in showing emotion, that they don't have a sense of humor. And I really enjoyed working with Josh's sense of humor, when he has a certain slightly rigid way of talking in his dialogue, a little bit stilted. For the first 25 pages, he doesn't curse at all, whereas Travis is a veritable sailor. And the first time he lets one fly, it's right after he's told Travis, stop cursing so much, it's exhausting. And, when he just said, "We just saw a fucking ghost." And then he can't just leave it at that. He has to explain his rationale behind it. This was an appropriate place to use the word. That's one of my favorite, places to nail down. This is who that character is.
And you come back to it a couple of times as a joke. Yeah.
I'm curious
Which
why
wasn't that was in my joke question. Was like, what do you have against the word fuck? But we didn't get to it. But yeah, you just
I think it's a filthy word, and I would never fucking ever say fuck.
I know.
I would never ever fucking say that.
It's like I told Jonathan Mayberry, you can't fucking curse on the show, man. That's not cool. I got a serious question though. Is there a particular reason why you tackled ghost hunting as opposed to insert any other supernatural element?
Yeah, that's actually really easy. I wanted to get these characters into a house, and that was the very first that was the very first way that occurred to me to get them into this forbidden house, because I wanted them to be in a house that is notorious within reason, but not crawling with other people, essentially closed to the public. And I said, okay, how the hell do I get them in there? And like Gabino mentioned earlier, I didn't want to go down the technology route. Number one, I think that's the people who don't enjoy a ghost hunter story, that's what they don't enjoy about it. I know that's true for me. Number two, that's a lot of research for something people don't want to fucking read. And number 3, it doesn't. I don't feel like it fit with, and this is of course Josh's obsession. I don't feel like it fit with his character. The people who get that, invest in that kind of technology and all that, they're trying to get YouTube famous. It's to me, it's pretty clear early on that he doesn't want to, despite the jokes in there about it, he doesn't want to write a book. He doesn't want to, strike it rich because he got this photographic evidence. He doesn't want to have, a YouTube video with 1 billion followers. He just likes doing this, and there's, no reason to pull technology into the mix. So that's why I went with reluctant ghost hunters.
What do you think, Josh? Why do you think Josh likes it, doing this so much?
Again, this is kind of, I never really go into it. If you ask me for like my, internal character Bible, I'd say it's just, a fascination from childhood.
That makes me want to ask if you're gonna write a prequel, because like I will, if Josh has something to do with the supernatural or the other world or whatever, I want to read that. That's something I wanted to say earlier, is that I found myself finishing the book and I'm like, what happens next? Like I do love these characters. And it's hard for me personally to separate, I guess, a bias from from just like reading your stuff. But I really think it's a great book, and I don't know, man. I'm excited for the general public to read this. So I want to lead into this. The blurbs that you have received so far from like Gabino or Laurel or Ron or Haley, or I'm probably missing some names. From that to the very soon to be released date, what's going on in your head?
Lots. I mean, I don't know. That's such a big question. There's so
That's
many
a
facets to
very
it. So,
vague question.
yeah, no, I'm gonna try and tackle them one at a time. I mean, we talked about Ron's blurb, and besides the fact that it came back to me within a week, I love it to death. I mean, we got it right here on the back of the book. He says Slattery Falls brings a fresh and exciting resonance to the classic haunted house tale. The cry in the night, the word on the wall, the horrors underneath, all become palatable and personal under LaFaro's masterful, his words, not mine, masterful execution. The not for resale thing's helping me here. A chilling story to be savored by lamplight in the thick black hours of night by an author of tremendous talent and heart. I mean, that's the first thing that came in, excepting of course the publisher and you, Patrick. That's the first feedback I get to this, and it's from an author who I have not known for a long time, but man, I respect the hell out of him, and man, can he write. So to get that was huge. Todd Kiesling had a wonderful blurb in there about big on he loved the characters. Tyler Jones had some excellent things to say. Haley Piper, you mentioned, and Laurel Hightower. Gabino's was mean. He just wrote "This sucks," and we couldn't put that in the book. But I appreciated the hell out of. I appreciated the hell out of anybody who
Short
even
and sweet.
took the time out of their day to read it and shared those kind words. With us being 3 days away from release, I mean, I got this mix of excitement and nerves, and I gotta imagine that for somebody who's putting a book out for the first time in the world, that's probably par for the course. It certainly helps that I've had a couple stories out in the world, so this is not the first thing anybody's going to be reading, but it's definitely the thing I'm most proud of. So that certainly, I don't know, I guess ups the stakes. I hope that people love it.
How painful was the editing process?
Well,
For-
the editor, I forget his name, McDonald's or something like that. Real dickhead, huge
Cletus
dick.
McFucknuts. Yeah, I know.
Cletus McFucknuts. No, the editing, and I it's gonna sound like I'm saying this just because you're here, Ken, but I shared it with Patrick personally. I absolutely loved the editing process. When I got the edits back, I think I went through them in 4 or 5 days because I couldn't wait to get home from work and just sit in front of that computer for a couple hours. It's you know it, there were and I think a lot of it is the attitude I went in there with, which is I wrote the first word of this story a year and a half ago,
Holy shit.
and I know it can be better. I am 110% certain that it can be better. So when one of those little track changes pops up on the side of the screen, I'm not thinking, what does this asshole want now? I'm thinking, you know what? The sentence would be would be tighter without that word. I'm thinking, this adjective or that adjective, we could add something in here. We could take something out here. We could change this. And I think that would make the story better. And there were a couple places where it's like, okay, I see why he suggested that, but I think it changes, what I want, how I wanted that sentence to come off. And the editor for All Their Grace was very, very receptive to any suggestions that I put in there. And I like to think that's because I didn't make a suggestion on every single one. Oh, I know you want to get rid of is, but hear me out. What if we kept it? It was a learning experience, and I really think that just over the course of 4 or 5 days, an in-depth look at all the things that I could do to make a story I was proud of tighter, better, leaner, faster. I think it made me a better writer. It was like taking a week-long workshop. I also don't think you were as mean as you tell people.
Stop it! Now you're screwing up my image I got here.
Yeah.
So, Brennan, does anyone else have anything on the topic of this book? If not, I will move on to his short fiction. All right, moving on to your short fiction. Sorry, I'm just looking up and you guys are all like, yeah, come on, dumbass, go. So your short fiction, man, you got a few...
You need a co-host. Like a permanent co-host.
This is
somebody to drag your ass out of the fire when you get in trouble.
God, I'm just like a fat bitch that's like, save me, strong man named Brennan.
Really weird.
Super weird. Where's that going? No one knows. So let's move on to the question of short fiction. You sold like a few stories last year?
Yeah, I've got 2 stories out in the world now. The very first one I sold, Nico Bell put together a cold weather horror anthology, and I wrote a story about ice spiders in a New Hampshire cottage. And it was, I think it was the first time I tried to write a creature feature, and it was, relatively straightforward, but it was a lot of fun. If all you're reading is Slattery Falls, you won't know this, but I tend to write from the point of view of kids a lot because I tend to spend a lot of hours every day around kids. I won't pretend to know completely how they think, but I think I have better insight into that than people who don't work as a teacher. So that one came out in January. I had another story in Proletariat, Tales of Horror and Class Warfare, an anti-capitalism anthology, and that was, I don't know what the cutoff is for Flash, but that was a short one. That was only about 1,000 words, and it was based on around the beginning of the pandemic. I saw a news story about this big company that sent had a COVID outbreak, had to send everybody home, and then brought them all back unreasonably quickly. And it kind of came to light that the the head people in that company were taking wagers on how many workers would get sick and how many workers would die. And I actually don't know if anything ever came of that. Probably not. But I kind of had a story that popped into my head based off of that. And that's all I got because our host is apparently using the
He
bathroom.
asked a question and vanished.
Yeah, no, he does that. That's why he needs a co-host, somebody to pretend he didn't just go to the bathroom. So I'll just keep droning on. So I also have a story coming out in a few months. The best way I can think to describe it is coming of age body horror about a little kid who goes down to play in the creek after school, catch some crayfish in his pail, and he finds a toe. And then he finds a finger, and he starts collecting body parts, and we go from there. That's going to be in Blackberry Blood, which is coming out in, I think, November, and it has Daniel Barnett in it. It's got Scott Cole, and Sadie Hartman's going to be writing the foreword on that one. Did you get all that, Patrick?
Caught it all, man.
Oh, yeah?
Audio listeners don't know what the fuck you're talking about right now.
Oh, they do.
The troubling part of having someone in the guest spot that knows me as well as you is that they know me as well as you. But it's not about me, Brian. So why don't we continue talking about the spiders and shit that you were just mentioning and the toes?
Yeah, we finished, so. We're done with this question. Next.
This isn't a roast on me. It's a roast on you, bitch.
It's always a roast on you, Patrick.
Story of my life. Ken, go ahead. You were talking.
Yeah, so there's another short story that he hasn't mentioned that it's called I Will Meet You There. Are you familiar with this one?
Am I familiar with it? Yes, I wrote it.
Do you recall this one?
Yeah, I do.
Well, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but that was just accepted 2 seconds ago to Midnight from Beyond the Stars.
You motherfucker.
Holy shit.
Yes.
Congratulations, man. That's fucking awesome.
That's really fucking cool, man. And I've got a couple people on here who I'll be sharing a table of contents with for the very first time. That's big.
Yeah.
So
I've known for a couple weeks now, but I wanted to wait till this moment.
Oh man, congrats.
Well, thank you, man.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just a little behind the scenes on that story. I mentioned earlier that with Slattery Falls that I could not have written that in third person. I don't think it would have worked. This is the polar opposite. This story was originally written in second person, and it's I was pretty happy with it, but I realized that I was kind of using second person like more as a gimmick than anything else. It really belonged in third person, and I went back through it, clarified a couple things, and added probably 1,000 words to the original, and ended up with something I was really pretty happy with. Something my biggest thing I wanted to capture with that one, one of my favorite movies of all time is Alien, because I don't think that any movie captures the isolation that makes horror scary maybe not quite as well, but quite the same way that one does. And I wanted to go for that very alone, feeling that Alien captures. Whether I nailed it or not, apparently you will be able to find that out in November or whenever that anthology comes out. But thank you, man. I am I'm borderline speechless, which doesn't happen usually. I need more beer then.
Cheers.
Gabino or Ron, go ahead, sirs.
That's awesome news, man. You don't get to see that often. You learn on social media or somebody sends you a text. So That's pretty cool. That's a packed anthology, and that's it keeps getting better. So I look forward to actually sitting down and reading the whole thing. Like I usually get into anthologies and then I'll read, one or two stories, put it aside, read for other things, come back 2-3 stories. But I think I might just have to sit down and read that whole thing in one sitting.
This was gonna take you a while. By the time I'm done announcing all of the authors in there, it's gonna be the same thing like Midnight from the Pentagram. It's gonna be that damn big. So I it's my own fault. I get greedy. I keep saying, oh, I'm only gonna have this many in there, and then I'll read more stories. I'm like, oh man, that was too good to pass up. So I'll pick up that one. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I
get excited every day, just waiting to see who Ken announces next. When I found out Gabino was going to be in there, I thought, yes, this is really turning out going to be a great anthology. With Al coming in and Gambino and it's just it's really turning out to be a great lineup.
Yeah, I'm totally stoked. I can't wait.
So, Brennan, I gotta ask, man, like, what are you currently working on?
All right. So, I mentioned earlier that when I finished this book, I put it aside and started on, other stuff to keep busy. So I've got another novella that it's done. It's been through betas. It's been through my edits, and it's out on submission with a few places. I am currently compiling. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with it, but I'm putting together a short story collection. It's sitting around 50,000 words right now. And at the moment, I'm trying my hand at writing something a little bit longer than the novella form. And I'm enjoying it. It's a different experience, because you can't quite capture the go tone of Slattery Falls in something that's gonna be 70,000 words or something like that. And I'm doing my best to steer away from the boring parts. But I think I think I'm gonna get it up to that word count, and then I'm gonna cut the absolute loving shit out of it when I go back and look at it later this year.
Now, the next question, man. What would you advise people? You're a shy guy. Like, you remind me of my neighbor who became one of my buddies, and he kind of said to me, if you did not initially talk to me, we wouldn't be talking. I feel like that's the same thing with you and I. So I bring that up because what do you have to say to newer writers? People aspiring to write, because there's a lot of things that you've done in a short amount of time. So I would love to hear what your advice is to them, or what your suggestions are to them.
Dude, my advice is Brian Keene's advice: ass in chair, fingers on keyboard. Like going back to what I said earlier, I didn't know how to start until I did. Don't put it off. If you want to try to write something, then try to write something. And you gotta put in the work. If I once I got down to realized this was something I wanted to finish, that I didn't want to be just one of those other people who was like, oh yeah, I tried to write a book once when I was 30, that I wanted to actually finish this thing. I won't say I write every day, but average week I'm there 5 or 6 times. And if I can't hit 1,000 words, I'm close. And there are some days where I'm up at 6 a.m. off to work, teaching piano and guitar lessons till 8 o'clock at night, come home, got to do the dishes. There's nights where it doesn't happen. But you got to make you got to make the space for it. And it's, when I was in music school, do you guys know how many hours there are in a week off the top of your head?
No.
172. And the reason I know that is because I had a music teacher who, whenever you'd show up to ensemble and you'd say, I didn't have time to practice, that guy would make you account for those 172 hours since the last practice. He'd say, okay, you can have 8 hours of sleep. You're in college. You're not getting that, but fuck it. I'll give it to you. You can have 3 hours a day for meals. You're not eating that long, but I'll give it to you. Classes, homework, take Sundays off, and, you'd still have 20 hours in your week. It's the time is there if you want it to be. If this is something you want to do, you'll find the time. It's the same thing that I'll say to my piano kids who don't practice now. I couldn't because of soccer. It's like, if soccer was important, you made the time for it, and I'm not saying you gotta spend 20 hours a week practicing piano, but if it's something you want to do, if writing or piano or guitar or literally anything is something you want to do, you'll find a way to make the time for it.
One of you fellas jump in, please.
It's the last thing I wrote for Cemetery Gates Society. It came out about 2 days ago, and it was exactly what Brennan is saying. I don't care if you complain about not having time to write. I better not see you tomorrow telling me that you watched 4 back-to-back episodes of your favorite series. It's not. Nobody's gonna give you time, but carve it out. Like, you can skip that one nap. You don't have to watch that documentary right now. Get it done. I want an agent. Did you write? No. I want to sell something to Netflix. Did you write it yet? No. I want to get published by so-and-so. Did you write something for them? No. It starts with the writing. And that's exactly what Brian says and what, Joe Lansdale has said for ages. Ass in chair, get it done, and then the rest will flow or not, but you won't know till you get the writing done.
Brandon, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Isn't that what we've been doing for like an hour and a half now?
You know what? Yeah.
Go ahead.
With this show, has it helped you with the writing, with the confidence, or what have you?
Oh God. I mean, that's not even a question. I mean,
I asked a question, so it was a question.
Okay. Well, it's absolutely is the answer. How many people have we talked to in the last like 15 months that have been there, that have done that, people like Lansdale who have been, made a complete career out of it.
Like 5 times, Cam like 4 times, Cabino 3 times.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked to some incredible writers who, span the gamut, like in terms of career experience. Some people who are newer, some people who've been at it for a while, people who've tried it this way, people who've tried it that way. And I mean, if you have the opportunity, like we do, to talk to writers for, like 2 nights a week, which is pretty much what we average, and you're not learning anything, then you need to work on your interview skills. I've taken away so much, and it gives you the opportunity to be a little bit selfish. There's almost like this unwritten rule of like, I'm going to let you plug, we're going to talk about your book. I read it. I loved it. Let's sing the praises of your book and see if we can get some people to pick it up. But then I'm going to pick your brain, and I want you to tell the listeners, but I want you to tell me what you know. And you hear a lot of stuff, you try it out, you take some to heart. And so, everybody's different. Some things are going to work, some things are not going to work for you. But yeah, I mean, I don't believe for a second that I would be not even have learned as much about writing as I did. That's certainly true, but that I would be as open to certain amount of things. We talked earlier about editing. And one of the reasons that I really was able to see editing as an opportunity to improve my writing was because we had Ken Kane on. and he told us about that. The editor is not working against you. The editor is, you both have the same common goal. You have this piece of thing that's got legs, and your job is to make it the best it can possibly be. That's what the editor wants. That's what you want. So, you're not fighting each other. The relationship should never be like that. You're working together. But yeah, I mean, the show has been absolutely invaluable as far as, mining information and, meeting a lot of really excellent people. I got Mr. Kelly down in my left-hand corner here because we invited him on the show to talk about his book of disgusting, sick stories. I've and he turned out to be one of the nicest guys, that we've talked to. I've got Gabino on because, we invited. This is your third time on. You sat in and talked about, the ins and outs of rejection, both as a writer, as a teacher, as an editor,
as
even
a person, even.
as a human. Yeah, exactly.
Always getting rejected as a human.
Mhm.
Always.
We invited McKinley on twice last year. Now we can't get rid of him.
I know.
I feel like it might be the other way around. Then it's not.
That's true.
It's a cycle.
That's
it's
true.
a cyclical issue. Yeah, that's awesome to hear, man. I'm too close to this topic. Someone else should talk.
I've been hearing the dog scratching on the door downstairs, so I'm gonna pull a Patrick and go figure out what the hell's going on.
Hey, audio listeners don't know what's going on. Ron or Ken, please jump in.
Get in there, Ron.
I'm drawing a blank.
All right, I'll save you. Brennan. Let's talk about the one thing we didn't talk about in the book that I really enjoyed was the character Weeks. What was your inspiration?
Oh damn! I thought after Patrick brought that up and then it didn't go any further, we might avoid that one. I got to be honest with you guys. There isn't much of one. I wanted to write a creepy ass character who, I wanted to write a kind of a looming ghost figure, and as it went along, I just kind of started exploring the backstory a little bit. Like, this guy he's been around for a long time, back in England, traces back further than that. And, consciously or not, the book was always going to deal with kids because it's my life. I can't escape it. I'm with kids all day and I come home and there's more kids here. And, the whole purpose of being a horror writer is dealing with things that scare you. At least that's my opinion. If your biggest fear is getting, trapped in an empty house with ghosts, then write that story. My biggest fear is something happening to my kids, whether it's, my kids that are in the other room, probably not asleep, probably giving their mom hell right now. Or whether it's, my kids that are under my watch when I'm at school. The worst case scenario is these kids that I care about in one capacity or another. What if something happened to them? And as much as I can't pinpoint an exact genesis, I guess, of Robert Weeks. It was always gonna have to do with kids. And now, as far as creating the backstory, I don't know where that came from. It just kind of poured out, and it was just one of those writing sessions that I heard people had, but I didn't believe it until it happened to me, where the journal entries that come in the book, and the library basement microfiche sessions, it was rattling around in here somewhere, and it poured out, thankfully, coherently on the page. But and through the editing process, when I read through this book like 15 times, those are some of my favorite parts. I really enjoy reading those back.
Yeah, mine too. I love the fact that it's got a historical aspect to it, even though it's fictional history. Um, I don't know. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot.
The
Now,
Nathan
my next
Hale
question
stuff.
is, do we
Oh,
need to search your basement to see if you've been digging down there here in the last year or so?
Well, I can tell you, I don't have a basement, so no,
Backyard?
I don't have a basement.
Okay.
Dorothy Petra.
Look, John Wayne Gacy only had a crawl space, and look what he did. So you don't have to have a basement.
I don't have a basement. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, so like I was saying, Dorothea, what's her name? She is a serial killer. It was an older woman that buried people in the garden. So, Brennan, you keep saying you don't have a basement. Do you have a garden?
I have a garden. It's filled with bodies.
The plants are growing very well.
It's like Secret Window.
Spoilers.
He
So,
doesn't have no.
Brennan, we're gonna jump to what are you reading now? Unless anyone has anything else to say. Brennan, what are you reading right now? Oh, go ahead, Kabina.
Not want to interrupt Brennan, but unless one of you is gonna fly in and pick up turds from my living room, I gotta take the dog out. So I'll be the one to interrupt to say, I'm sorry I can't tuck books. Duck needs to take a shit. But it's been real.
That's legitimate.
Kabino, thank you for allowing us to be with you, man. Have a great night.
No, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate your Saturday night. Really do.
Yeah, thanks, Kabino.
Hey, man, no other place I'd rather be. And congrats on the book, man. It's awesome. And once you're done partying, the work starts now.
You know, I never stop partying.
Yeah. You gotta sell it, man. So get to work.
I will, man. I will. And hey, I won't pretend I didn't learn some of that from you.
Hey, blame me. Fuck it.
Absolutely. I blame you for all that fucking work that I got to do now.
Blame me. I'll take the blame, but you're the one who has to do it anyway. So get to it.
Yeah.
Have a good night, Kabino.
Thanks for coming, man.
I will. Thanks for having me. I will talk to all of you soon.
See you, brother.
All right. Cheers.
Yeah.
Brennan.
Yes.
Where were we?
You were going to ask me politely what I'm reading.
I just lost Brennan. There he is. Sir, what are you currently reading?
I am reading a couple things. I started reading Janine Pipe's book, Twisted Tainted Tales. It's so much alliteration that I have to look at it every time I say the title or I will mess it up. And you know what? She does something that I really dig. When collections do this, there's kind of like this wraparound overarching story, like an introduction. It's, you know, almost a little Book of Blood-y, where there's this intro that, you know, sets up where all these stories came from, and then we check in with the narrator every so often between stories. I think that's a cool device, you know, when you stumble on it every so often. And I'm trying to finally work through all these Death's Head Press splatter westerns. I've gotten all the way to number 4, The Night Silver River Run Red by Christine Morgan. And this one's it's different so far. It's like I didn't realize that there were really no like young characters in the first several. It's pretty much just all grown dirty men shooting the shit out of each other. So like this one automatically just follows a group of kids, you know, at a traveling circus, and it's nice, you know. I dig the whole splatter western thing, but I could see how it would get very repetitive very fast if not done well. So
All right. Excellent.
you're the host. It's your job to throw it to other people. I feel like you can just keep waiting for me to do it. I'm
Yeah,
the
no,
guest, man. I'm gonna act like the goddamn guest.
it's
God,
super
I
weird.
can tell who leans on who in this show, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think I'm very much so into putting my face as the logo? I'm like, hey, I'm the talent. No, that's not true. So, Ken, what are you currently reading?
So I am currently reading 3 gazillion manuscripts, but outside of that, I'm reading Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin for Unburying the Dead.
Such a good book. I'm like 2 hours away because I jumped to the audio version, and it's like, it says Maya Farrow. I'm pretty sure that's the actress that was in
Yeah.
Rose. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. It's
She's narrating it.
it says Maya Farrow.
It
Wow,
doesn't. It says
that's
Mia
awesome.
Farrow.
What?
It says Mia Farrow.
Oh, Mia. What did I say? Maya.
Yes, 3
Right.
times.
Close enough.
Ron, what are you currently reading?
I'm halfway through Tim Meyer's Malignant Summer. Loving it. Great book. I just finished.
Another beefy
What's
tone.
Yes, it was a beefy tone. It is so, but I mean the story. I mean character development's wonderful, and that's what you get when when you get a book of that length. You really get characters develop very well and everything, and Tim's done a great job with this one, and I finished reading Weird Tales. SD Velasco's editing it, and it's got a lot of great people like Jonathan Mayberry and Gabino and Cena and Sisters of Slaughter, and I'm doing the introduction for it. So
Nice.
so that's that was a big kick to do that, and then I've got Joe Lansdale's new book from Death's Head Press. Um, um, the Snow one.
Yep.
Yes, the Hungry
Wait,
Snow.
does Ken have that?
I do not have that.
Wow. We own. I can't believe I own something that you don't.
Yeah, I've been ordering a lot of the new books from the authors and from the publishers, directly from the publishers, because um, I think it's better to buy direct because the money goes straight to the authors or to the publishers instead of Amazon getting their big old chunk of it, and and plus I like signed books, so if a new author comes out with something I really would like to have, I go directly to them, message them and see if they have some in stock, So.
Yeah. Now, Brennan, a question for you is for Slattery Falls. Are you going to take up like old Ron here does and throw some artwork on there for every signed edition?
People would not want that. I'm not much of an artist, so
Yeah,
I could draw three stick figures.
Tim Meyer.
I've dug myself a hole with this artwork because when I get the scares that cares, I'll probably do stick figures instead of elaborate art because I won't have the time to do it. Maybe
It is. It's a lot. You'd be there all day and night.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim Meyer actually commented on that on Twitter. He said that he's like, I gotta up my game for the signing.
Yeah, I think that was Tim Myers.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. That's not quick.
Exactly. Yeah, I got a nice little shipment from Ron here a couple weeks ago, and good Lord, I mean, he must have spent an hour on the stuff that he did.
Well, that's why it takes people so long to get my books because I put a little effort into it. Okay. And when I have like 2 or 3 stacks I need to do, I'm not going to rush through it. I mean, I want people to have something special to when they open it up and say, he really thought a lot when he signed this book for me. So.
Well, yeah, that's effective because I'm not going to get a Ronald Kelly book from Amazon for that exact reason.
Me neither.
So what I am currently reading is okay, god damn it. I'm finishing up Rosemary's Baby. I think it's really great, and then I'm gonna dive into the movie. And reading John Foster's Rooster, and it's pretty cool. It's just about a hitman and kicks ass. I don't know a better way to talk about the synopsis besides that. So, Brennan, I don't know if you know this, but like for the listeners, they can go to deadheadspace.com and they can check out reviews, articles. They can even look at the links for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And they can also click the store tab to check out my ugly ass mug on a coffee mug or like a face mask. Not sure if that's gonna be a thing a year from now, but like you could still buy it. So Brendan, where can people follow you?
Hey, it's good to have during cold and flu season.
That's true.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in North Quincy.
What accent was that?
I tried for a Boston accent, but like I've been drinking, so I don't think that's
swing and a miss, sir. People can follow me on Twitter is probably where you're most likely to get an answer, at Brennan LaFaro. You can go to brennanlafaro.com, and that has Instagram, that has Twitter, that has everything you could possibly need. Gabino mentioned earlier writing an essay for the newest issue of Cemetery Gates Society. I've got an interview in there. That's front page of the website if you want to link to that. It's probably also on my Twitter. Yeah, that's and Instagram, which I don't update super often, but I am there, is at Brennan LaFaro.
And I gotta go with final thoughts. What are your final thoughts, sir?
You know what? Thank you guys for putting together this episode. I had an absolute blast. You you worry that you can't talk about your book for an hour. I mean, I tried to sit down and before Ken saved my ass, I tried to sit down and write the back cover copy. I'm like, I can't talk about this book for 2 paragraphs. How the hell am I going to fill up an hour and a half? But man, the time flies. Great thoughtful questions. And just appreciate the hell out of the 3 of you, and of course Gabino, appreciate your support so much.
Absolutely. Ron, final thoughts, sir?
Just love being on the show. I mean, it seems like every show we have some new stuff to talk about, and I'm very, very happy for Brennan and very proud of Brennan for his accomplishments in such a short time, because from the time I started writing to the time I actually got published was 12 years. So if you can make it that quick, I mean, my hat's off to you. You really did a great job.
When Ron told me when he started writing, and compared to when he got his first short story published, that blew my mind. Yeah, Brennan, I echo it because man, I started writing in 2013, and I listed off earlier what I have written so far. You're just scratching the surface. That's my final thoughts. Ken, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Very proud of you, man. You've come a long way very fast. I tried hard as hell not to publish you. And, you made it impossible to ignore. To me, that's the indication of a hell of a writer. So, congratulations. You've earned every accolade. You're a true champion of the industry. I couldn't be prouder of you.
I appreciate that, man. Really appreciate that.
That is awesome. So
don't know how I feel about you springing the story acceptance on air live, but no, I love that. I love that, man. I think that was that was really cool. And
Brandon, I fucking told you he'd do that. Listeners,
you told me he'd do that, Pat. So we all had a suspicion,
Yep. Listeners, next episode 107, is with Daniel Barnett. It airs this Thursday, so please stay tuned to that. And we have 106 episodes that you can check out at any point in time, not including our Spotlights episode, which also includes the first one, Sam Palaio, and second one is S.A. Hunt. So check those out. Please let us know how you feel about them. And many podcasts to listen to. Thank you for picking us.